Welcome, everyone. This is Tim Laskus, and you're listening to The Tim Laskus Show, episode 27. And today's featured guest is Julie Zuzek. Julie understands why 90% of businesses fail. She has 15 years experience in marketing and communications for technology companies and startups. She launched Corporate Yogi in 2011. She is a podcast host of Conscious Business, and Julie understands helping her clients see their core values. She helps you understand how your core values are linked to your success. So you better get ready for an awesome show because she brings great content and great value. Enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests, entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome, listeners. Today's featured guest is Julie Zuzek. Julie, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did great. Zuzek, yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad. I have a history of not saying names correctly. But thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to have a chance to finally talk to you and to your listeners.
Yeah. Now you were saying you're up in Toronto and it's sunny and hot and about 120 degrees. Is that right?
In my dreams, about 5 degrees, and it's very overcast. Although I have to confess, we've had a pretty nice, pretty mild winter overall. So I'm not really complaining.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, that's excellent. Well, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself aside from business. What do you do for fun?
Well, I am a bit of a yoga junkie, I have to confess. I did practice for years on my own, and then I decided to become a teacher. So I would have to say a lot of my world, my social world, is really revolved around yoga. So, either attending classes, hanging out with and socializing with other teachers, and then also traveling around the world and running retreats. I love to be able to get to meet people from all over the world and teach them.
Oh, that's excellent. I read so much about how yoga is very, very helpful for the mind, for the body, and just all the kind of everything that's beneficial about it. But with me, with a short attention span, and I'm not very flexible, should I even start and try yoga?
Yeah, I love this question. So we always like to say, if you're wondering whether you should do yoga, a lot of people have that reasoning. They say, oh, well, I'm not flexible. Well, that's like saying, you're too dirty to take a bath, right? Yoga is really a practice that can help you to become more flexible. So, don't feel guilty if you have really, tight hamstrings or, again, a lot of your listeners are athletes. So they tend to have really, really tight muscles. And so yoga can be the perfect practice to really counteract a lot of the work that they do.
Awesome. That's great. Well, do I have to wear tights?
You don't have to wear tights.
I might look a little silly in that. I don't know. Just saying.
You can wear shorts. You can wear track pants. Depends what kind of yoga. I mean, there's many, many different styles. So I would not suggest going into like 105-degree hot yoga class with your tracky bottoms on. I would suggest wearing shorts. So depends on the style of yoga that you pick.
What about like a one piece that has like, cut off, like just goes over the shoulder and then kind of like shorts, like a one piece spandex?
You could totally rock that, Tim.
That would be
totally
cool.
And if you
I
do,
do that,
please,
I'll put that on Instagram.
Yeah, please take a picture so that we all get to see it. I would love that.
And I know you'll be laughing with me, not at me, right?
Of course.
Well, that's great. Well, tell everyone what your focus is professionally and what are you working on?
Yeah, so I'm a business coach, and so my background is actually working in corporate, in marketing and communications. So I worked with a lot of technology companies and helped them really to establish a strong brand and grow their business. And then about 6 years ago, I started my own business called the Corporate Yogi, and that's where I really get to fuse a lot of my business background with my spirituality and my Eastern wisdom. So I get to work with entrepreneurs when they're first starting out on their business with a topic that I think you'll really appreciate. And we really focus on their mindset. And what I always say is, as an entrepreneur, your business can't grow until you do. And being an entrepreneur is really the most intense form of personal development that you'll ever go through. And, so often when we have a job, there might be things that we need to grow or to focus on, but they can always be put on the back burner and you're still going to get that juicy paycheck every 2 weeks. But when you're in the world of running your own business, you don't get to have an option whether you want to focus on other things or not. Those are really at the forefront of what you need to do to grow your business. So that's what I love to focus on, is really mindset with entrepreneurs.
Right. So it's grow you and then grow your business. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And you mentioned spirituality. And so how does that fit in?
Yeah, so, when we look at the definition, or how I like to define spirituality, it's really just understanding two simple things, right? That we are all connected to each other, and that we have a higher power out there that is bigger than all of us individually. So the whole is the sum of the parts. So, at the end of the day, we have to focus on how we are all connected to each other rather than how we are different from each other. And that's something that I like people to really pull through into their business.
And that seems to fit in to, business models where it's a win-win for everyone, that it's not out to just conquer and beat everyone up and get as much money as you can, but how do you go out and really connect and provide value to others?
Yeah, really well said. And I think these days, we're building businesses in a very different way. And, we're seeing so many people wanting to start up businesses because they want to do it in a different way than they've seen done in the past, or than their previous employer, where it was just all about the bottom line and only caring about money. And so, when I work with a client, we always start with a very clearly defined purpose. So how do you want to help and serve others? And how do you want to do good in this world? And if you can get clarity on that, that's your big P purpose. And then your small p purpose is, your financial objective or your motive or whatever you're going to measure in terms of running your business. But if you don't have that big P purpose clear, your intrinsic motivator, then you're not going to be able to have the motivation to really go the long haul to get your business to succeed.
So is that kind of one of the key areas that you go to initially, is when you're working with a new client, is to talk about their purpose and help them to define it?
Absolutely. It's so critical. And some people have a clear idea of what it is, and other people, we have to do a little bit of a dance to figure it out. But at the end of the day, it's really, really important to define that, because when you have clarity on what your purpose is, you know what your superpower is, you know what the things are that you're really, really good at. And that's what you've got to focus on to run a business. But yet so often the ego comes in, as I'm sure you run into this too, and it comes and it tells all these stories, all these narratives around, well, you can't do what you love because you won't make good money at it. Or, so many other people are doing that. There's no space out there for you to do it. And so our saboteur, our ego, comes and tells us all these stories that try to hold us back from really doing what it is that we love. And so my job is about getting people to be clear about what their purpose is and really give themselves permission to do what they love.
Well, I always say that we are our own worst enemies, so to speak, that the negativity that just kind of plays through our mind day in and day out can often just tear us down more than anyone around us that has something negative to say.
100%. I totally agree. And that's the work that I really love to do with someone, is stand beside them as they're growing their business. Because if you stay unconscious and you let those stories, those beliefs, those behaviors stay in the background, then you will actually sabotage yourself, or you will take 6 months to do something when it could have really been done in a week. And that's where businesses, really fall off the rails and fail, because you're not doing those high impact things that you really need to do to move the dial. You're focusing on, like killing your email today. Okay, well, that's great, but that's not really what you needed to be focusing on, to make your business succeed. So it's about holding someone accountable and really getting to help them shift their mindset to see these, things that they might think are scary as actually great opportunities to really grow into.
Yeah, and it's funny that a lot of that negativity within ourselves, within our minds, often stays in hiding until things start to become difficult, or things get tough, or things aren't going our way. We're not becoming as successful as we thought we were going to be, or it's not coming as fast. And then that's when those negative thoughts start to kick in.
Absolutely. It's when we're at the outer edges of our comfort zone. That's when we really start to hear our saboteurs because they want to keep us nice and safe, doing the things that we know how to do, doing the things that we have 100% success rate with, and once we start to go out to the edge to do those new things or those scary things, that's when the negative voices come. They're kind of like bouncers, right? Or gatekeepers. They want to keep us right smack dab in the middle of our comfort zone. And so, once we go out to that outer edge, thinking about doing something big, like for yourself, thinking about, launching a podcast, that's when the negative voices come up because they want to keep us in check, keep us small.
Well, it's something different. I'm a firm believer that we're creatures of habit. And many times our habits are or they could be neutral or they could be bad or they could be good. But, we like habit. I mean, we probably have, maybe 3, 4, 5 restaurants that we always go to. We don't really venture out to anywhere else. We drive the same way to, our business or to our jobs or to the mall or wherever you're going. You don't look for a different route every time you go somewhere. We like things to be consistent, and then our minds are set up that way. And then we also have that consistent thought pattern, with whether it be negative or neutral or positive, and to be able to kind of scoop out those negative thoughts and get rid of those is very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll throw out too is the motivator or the accelerator to really get to challenge that daily humdrum and daily routine is that you're building a muscle. You're building a muscle of doing something new. So the first time, you might take something on, it feels a little bit scary. But guess what? You've just created a framework or a reference point for the next time you want to do something new. So you can look at that and say, oh, well, I was able to, go to my first yoga class in hot pink spandex and, I managed to survive. I guess I can, do something else that is new. And so it's like building a muscle and really conditioning ourselves to do those new things and recognize that actually, not only did I succeed, but it felt good because you expanded your range and you feel really, really powerful after doing something new.
Wow.
And so it's building that growth muscle.
Well, I love that analogy. I can identify with that. And I mean, that's just a wonderful way of putting it, Julian. The first time or first couple of times you do something using a muscle you haven't used, it's pretty weak, but consistency builds it up and it strengthens it. So I like that analogy. That is really good. And could you provide a couple of tips for the listeners, for those who are out there who are on the fence about becoming business owners and entrepreneurs? Do you have any advice or tips or resources that you could provide?
Yeah, well, I would say, we talked about the one, which is having a clearly defined purpose. I think that's really, really important because not only knowing what your passion is, but knowing who you are. And a lot of the work that I do with new entrepreneurs, it's getting them to be really clear about what is important to them, not only in terms of their purpose, but what their core values are. So I always have an exercise that I do with new clients is to pick out their 5 core values. So it's a whole 30-minute exercise that we do to get clear on what those are. Now, the reason that's so important is because you need to know what is really, really important to you. And the thing with values is that's our biggest indicator to understand synergies and conflict. So the people that, you get along with easiest in life are often people that you share the same core values with. So values of, being authentic, of being hardworking, so that's definitely one of my really important values is hard work. So when I encounter someone who's a little bit lazy or they don't like to work hard, that's frustrating for me. And so that can cause conflict. So for example, conflict would be people having different core values. So making sure that you're clear on what those values are is going to help you succeed in your business, but also really enhance your relationships with other people.
And what if someone said, well, my core value is having a Lamborghini?
So I would say, I actually wouldn't map that to a value. I would say your core value would be to have, high high net or high value cars or high performance cars, or it could be adrenaline. Like I would work back to figure out what the core value is, and then that would be the Lamborghini would be a way to fulfill that core value.
Oh, okay. Because I think a lot of people will get confused about values and purpose and think, well, it's about having millions of dollars, the expensive car, and that's what I value and that's my purpose. And so you would set them straight.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. And I think a lot of people do get really, especially in the world of entrepreneurship and high performance athletes, people get really confused about material objects and how that can bring you happiness. But, I'll be straight up with you, Tim. I work with a lot of people who have a lot of money, and it's not the money that makes them happy. There's a lot of people that are very wealthy that are completely miserable. And this is why we have to get clarity on what our purpose is, because the money never brings you happiness. Money can be a great way for you to really do things you love, to have that freedom to travel, like we were talking about going to Costa Rica or wherever you want to go. That can be a great way to enjoy your life. But if you don't have that purpose underneath it, then you're going to be miserable. And my background before I started my business, I worked in risk management company. We did software for tier 1 banks. And so we worked with a lot of bankers who, are some of the most wealthy people on the planet. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of them are very, very miserable because how much money is enough? Money is one of those things that it's this target that we have in our life that just keeps moving further and further out. Like once you get into the millions, well, maybe million is enough. I really need $1 billion. And so it just is this like never ending target of fulfillment that we're striving for.
Yeah, so the carrot just continues to shift and get further and further, and we're almost there getting it, then we shift it again. And but yeah, you talked about people not being happy with money. Just watch the cable show, I won the lottery, and see how many people are extremely happy on that. The majority of them say, wow, I wish I never would have won the lottery, and all the pain and issues that come with the money that they had won.
And I'm not sure we were going to talk about a book, and I was wondering if I could bust that out now.
Sure, go
One of
for it.
the favorite books that I like to recommend to people is really around mindset, and especially with money, because I find entrepreneurs usually have a money mindset story that they've created for themselves. So I always love to recommend T. Harv Eker's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, because what he does is he explains that we all have a setting or a belief around money, kind of like you would set your furnace to a specific temperature. And I think even he uses in the book, people winning the lottery as a great example of that. And what ends up happening, it's not really the money that's making them miserable. It's the fact that they've come into the money, they're not used to having that kind of money, and they don't know how to handle it. So their ultimate objective is to go back to the place where they are comfortable, which is, they might have a certain income bracket that they were at before. And so they are going to subconsciously just spend through all that money to get to the place of comfort, get back to their comfort zone of just having enough to pay the bills every month or wherever that happened to have been. And so the misery comes from this sense of failure that they have of, oh my gosh, I just won $1 million, but guess what? It's all gone within a year. And so then they beat themselves up even more around that. So that's my personal take on people in the lottery.
Wow, that's a wonderful resource. Can you repeat the author and the name of the book again?
Yeah, so it's T. Harv Eker, and it's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind.
Wow, that sounds powerful.
Yeah,
love
fantastic.
it. Thank you for sharing that with the audience.
Yeah.
Now, thinking back to, going back in time, when did you realize, Julie, that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, and what helped you to make that step?
Well, I was really shifting gears. I didn't actually sit down intentionally to be an entrepreneur and want to leave my job. It was really about just moving into that next career phase. So from, marketing and communications into wanting to become a coach and working with companies to focus on culture, to focus on building better workplaces. And so as I shifted, gears to go into that new career, I really found myself becoming an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of service-based professionals fall under this same category as well, is that when you go out and and shift gears to, stop being an employee and starting to run your own business, you think you're just becoming a coach, or you're becoming a massage therapist, or you're coming whatever modality that is. But what we don't really talk about a lot is really you're essentially building your own business. You're building a practice and you're trying to find clients. And so I have to say, I just kind of leaped in headfirst into this new life of being a business coach, which I loved, but I found myself having a lot of challenges in the very beginning, not realizing how much time it would take to really build up a client base and really get myself established.
How did you handle that fear factor? Because a lot of people want to take that leap, but fear holds them back. How did you deal with it?
Well, like I said, for me, I really leaped into this new career. I didn't really realize what I was getting myself into, if I'm completely
you didn't
honest.
have time to even
No.
think. You just jumped off the cliff.
Well, because I was living in England at the time, and so our company was purchased by a larger UK-based company, and my visa was up. So I had to come back home to Canada. And so I started looking at, the next marketing job that was right along the path of what I was doing, and nothing really excited me about that. So I just had a friend who had gone through her coach training, and I was really inspired by the work she was doing. And I said, hey, I'm going to do that too. So I quit my job. I took 8 months off to do my training, to do a little bit of traveling around the world, and set up the business. And I really, really dove headfirst. And I think, if I'm looking back and being honest, probably because my background was in business and I had that, marketing and branding under my belt, I thought, all you really do is just set up a website, set up a whole business, trademark your name, and then, you just wait for the clients to show up at your door. But what I realized is, that didn't really happen. It wasn't that easy, I have to confess.
So it took a while for the money and the resources to start rolling in for you.
Absolutely. And I think the extra challenge, looking back now, that I can see that I didn't realize at the time, was I had also shifted careers. So had I, the smart thing for me to do would have been to start up a service agency of doing marketing for businesses. But that really wasn't what I did. I wanted to really get into this mindset piece of business coaching and really helping entrepreneurs at that deeper level. So if I had just gone out and started a new business doing what I had already done for 15 years, then it might have been a little bit easier. But I chose that extra challenge of being in a brand new city where I didn't have a network, of going into a completely different industry. And I think that made it a little extra challenging.
Yeah, and while you took a risk there and waited for money to roll in, and once you had the money, how did you know how to manage it? Like, what kind of messages did you receive while you were growing up, about how to make money, or how to save it, or how to take $1 and make it into two?
Yeah, well, that's great that you're bringing this up, because I think in that book that I mentioned, T. Harv Eker talks a lot about every single message that you receive around money goes into your money blueprint. And so, not just messages at home with your parents, but also messages from teachers, messages from other peers, or other people that you have seen around you. So for me, there was a lot of messages that I did have to dig around in. And, it was last fall where I did a 3-part series on money mindset. And, I'm laughing because this is such a common theme. I had so many of my clients come to me and say, can you please do an episode on money mindset? Or I'm having problems breaking through this barrier that I've been at for 2 years, with my earnings. Can you help me get through to that next level or to that next phase? And so I sat down to create the series, and it was such a mammoth episode. I was like, okay, well, I think it's a 2-part episode. Well, it ended up being a 3-part episode on money mindset, because it is such a big topic. Because, I can't just say to you, Tim, this is what you need to start doing tomorrow. You can't just take action. You have to do the work to go below the waterline, below the surface, right? If you use that iceberg analogy, because that's really where your beliefs hold all the potential of your earning, right? Of money. And so we need to get to that point where we're figuring out what those are, then we re-script it, and then we move forward and take action. So it's really a 3-part part to process.
Right. So it's much bigger than what you initially thought as far as what everything was involved with creating that.
And it is, and this is what one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about is getting people to fix things permanently. So, like for example, back to your story about the show and people winning money with the lottery. Well, that's a great way to have money, but if you haven't done the work to permanently understand and re-script your relationship with money, you're going to do everything subconsciously to lose that money to get back to the place where you're comfortable. And so with everything I do, whether it's addressing fear or working with money or on your brand, we have to do that work at the deep, deep root level to shift it permanently. Because if not, you're just, going in and putting a Band-Aid solution on something, and then you're going to have to address it again next year.
Yeah. You also may want to get rid of your family members. If you have a big family and a lot of friends, go buy a cabin in the woods somewhere up in the top of Canada and get lost, because everybody's going to be looking for you.
That's right. And, then that's another piece too, is I know a lot of entrepreneurs face, once they start to really get to that level of success, all these people come out of the woodwork to, be their new best friends. And so that's why it's really, really important to know who you are, right? Know what your values are so that you can almost script what it's going to be like when that happens so that you know how to handle it. Because it can be really, really overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of being overwhelming, you jumped off the cliff to make that sacrifice to work for yourself and to just jump right into entrepreneurship. Thinking back, what's been the biggest mental struggle for you? Earlier we talked about kind of having that negativity, but it didn't seem like you had much of that. But what's been the most challenging mentally for you as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I have an answer for you for sure on this one. I didn't have to think very long. This was really stepping up to be the figurehead for my business. So very much in my past as a marketing professional, we always got to kind of hide behind the curtain. So, we weren't the salesperson working with the client. We weren't the front of the line figurehead for the business. And what I did when I first started out was very much create the Corporate Yogi as it was a business that was a B2B business, right? Business to business. So it was about a brand. I didn't have my photo on the website. I was really being shy and I was really, really playing small because, I had all these ego stories around, well, you don't want to be arrogant. And what are people going to think of you, if you're going around telling everybody you're an expert? So I had a lot of that mindset to work out. I was really, really playing small in the very beginning. And it was only kind of when I rebranded and refreshed the website that I had the courage to, have a photo shoot done and have some pictures put up on the website and really, really step into myself as an expert. But there's, like I always say to my clients, there's no such thing as a confidence fairy. Like if you're waiting around for the confidence to get started, I have to tell you honestly, that's never going to happen. You have to find the courage to move forward into something, and the confidence will come to you relative to the action that you take. And so I really, really had to live through that lesson and learn that, which has been great. I mean, it wasn't easy, but now I can really see this in other people, in my clients, and I can really help them lovingly to do what they need to do because, I took that step in front of them.
Wow. Well, it seems like you could have the best ideas on how to help people and be creative, but if people really don't know you and they don't connect with you, then it's difficult for you to actually build your business. But it's Julie who they're looking for. It's their connection to you. And that trust and your personal story that people connect with, and then they come to you and then they look at, okay, she has all this great knowledge and insight, I trust her, and that's why I'm going to utilize her services.
That's right. And, there's businesses change over the last 20 years since I started out, and especially with technology. I mean, the way that we are able to connect with people around the world, it's phenomenal, the ability we have to share information, to share content. But at the end of the day, the basic principles don't change. And, one of the things I learned early on that is still true today, which is trust factor. People want to do business with others that they know, that they like, and that they trust. And, it doesn't matter what business you're in, that's all something that we we need to really connect with. And so I think you're so right. You have to know what your brand is, and you have to be able to communicate that consistently so that people can really get to know you. And so that's why I'm really proud of you for creating this podcast, because it's a great opportunity for people to really, really get to know who you are and also how you build relationships, because that's really, really what's going to guide them and inspire them to work with you.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar to you in your story of not wanting to be out front, but I took a different kind of turn, as you did, and said, well, let me take that risk and put myself out there. And that's why, I named the podcast after myself. I put my personality out there, and that's what really connects with people. And so it was a chance that I took, and I didn't feel comfortable about it, but I've embraced it. And I've come to find that it's one of the best things that I've decided to do was to put my name and my face out there and really just let people see me for who I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And looking back in your journey, you've had lots of experience as an entrepreneur. And what's been the most fulfilling moment for you?
Well, I have to be honest, it's the stories that I hear from my clients, and we always want in coaching, we always want to have these big epic moments where, you get to witness someone making a big shift in their life and that light bulb goes on and, you can just see their whole energy in their body shift. And it's really the stories that I get from people. It's those small moments where, the penny drops and people just realize something and they send me an email and say, oh, do you remember, 3 years ago when we had that conversation in Starbucks about, whatever we were talking about? And they come back to me and say, you changed my life, or you gave me the courage to start my business. And when people come back to you and tell you that, there just is no better feeling, because, I used to help make bankers be richer than they already were. And that is a proud accomplishment in my life, but it didn't feel fulfilling. But now to know that I am able to empower and inspire someone to really see what their unique gifts are, to give them permission to take that leap and start their own business. And when they get to that point where they're sustaining themselves and really thriving and feeling empowered with their business, there just is no greater feeling on this planet.
Yeah, the money that we make will line our pockets at one moment, and then the next it's gone and we've forgotten all about it. But the people that connect with us and reach out and share their personal story of how we changed their life, that will stay with you forever. And I'm sure you could probably remember almost every person who's come to you and shared their story of how you've changed their life.
Yeah, and if I ever lose one of them top of mind, I have them all down in a document. So one tip I'd love to share with anybody starting out is, there's a lot of highs, there's a lot of lows, a lot of peaks and valleys when you're starting out. And so what I started to do early on is whenever I got a really lovely email or some kind words from someone or a compliment on, a workshop that I ran, I took a screen capture of that and I pasted it just in a Word document. And I've been adding to that over the years, and it's about 50 pages now. But it has all these beautiful, beautiful kind words and emails from people. And whenever I'm having a down day, which I do, we no matter where you are in your journey, you're still going to have those bumps in the road where you launch something and it doesn't work, or you just feel frustrated, or you're just having a blah day. Then I go back to that and I read through that, and it reminds me of, oh yeah, I guess I am making progress here, or this is why I'm doing it. And look at all these people that I am having an impact. And that's just a small fraction, because those are only the people that, took time out of their day to make the effort to let you know about it. But there's so many others that we're reaching that we don't even really know. And, that has really, really been a great tool that I reference all the time.
Wow, I love that extra tip. Well, Julie, you have brought great value to the show, and we're at the end. But before we leave, I would like you to tell the listeners how they can find your website and find you online on social media and all that good stuff.
Okay, so the best thing to do is to head over to my website. So it's thecorporateyogi.com. And if anybody is starting up a new business or in the early phases of their business, I would suggest checking out the podcast. You can also find it in iTunes and Stitcher. And it just has, what I like to do is I like to curate the common themes that I see with my clients and members of my mastermind. And I turn those into these little mini teachable lessons each week. So that is a great resource for anybody starting out who really wants to, do that deeper work around mindset, around their beliefs, around really setting up a business that they're passionate about.
And your podcast is called Conscious Business, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Conscious Business with the Corporate Yogi.
Julie Zuzek. Julie, you've been fantastic. Thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to continue to stay in touch and watch you on your journey forward.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Thank you for your great work and service to really help people and inspire them around the world and really build this community that you've created.
Well, thank you. Well, you take care.
Okay, bye.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskus.com.